Welcome to the Dr. Grant Show. My name is Dr. Grant, and I am so excited to bring you my guest. I met him actually in one of our Facebook groups, the Coaching Jungle. And what fascinated me about his story is that he utilized NLP, which is known as neuro-linguistic programming, during a very heated and intense court case where there was a lot of money on the line. And we know NLP, also known as neuro-linguistic programming, can be used for a plethora of things, from eating, mindfulness, negotiations. However, I had never seen it executed so beautifully. Now, if you're a woman or a brave man that struggles with food addiction and emotional eating, you'll often hear me say, it has nothing to do with willpower. It has nothing to do with calorie counting. It has to do with you having the tools to manage your mindset when you hit those life situations. And this gentleman I brought on, he is an expert. Richard Junio is a coach that specializes in getting results. Richard, can you I wouldn't do our story justice as to how we met and how you have magically worked NLP in your life. Can you just share with everyone how you use NLP?
Well, it's a very funny thing. At one point, one of my friends opened up a massage parlor. So he said, well, do you want to come over, and get a massage? I said, sure. So while I was waiting my turn, I was reading a magazine. And it's the first time I got introduced to NLP because I saw, the movement of the eyes, left, right, to determine, the visual, auditory, kinesthetic pattern. I said, wow, this is great stuff, I could probably use this in business. So anyways, I started hunting for books, and they were not, that many. And we're talking about late 70s, early 80s, okay? Well, maybe around 77 or something. So I started buying the books, and I finally got my hands on it, and then finally found out about Milton Highland Erickson, with Erickson and hypnosis. So I really, ate everything up, and then I started using it. So eventually, and of course, when John Gritter came to Montreal, then of course I really got, my certification in it, with him. Later on, I took also with John Gritter in Provincetown some Ericksonian hypnosis a weekend, just to find out more about it. But in business, I mean, the thing that you got attracted to is when I talked about that story at the court. What happened is that my father, I don't know if you want to know the story or not, I'll just give you a quick review of it.
People need to know this.
My father passed away, like we were in a family business before I became, consultant, trainer, and coach. So I was there, and at one point my father, deceased, and he did a bad will. So there was two families involved, and he split right in the middle. So what happens eventually is I took a lawyer because I didn't believe that the will had been done properly. So anyways, I took this advice from my sister. She said, go take this lawyer. He's very good, international law and, all this. So I said, okay. So I gave the lawyer $30,000, so ahead, so he could start to do the work. After a while, I found out he was not good. So I dismissed him and took another one. But I'd already given $30,000 and I was, so what the hell, keep it, But then he sued me for $700,000, thinking that he had lost the opportunity to, represent me for the will. So then we had to go to court. So then what I did with my lawyer, I sort of coached him a little bit. I said, listen, I might do things in court that you will find funny, but let me do it because I know that my former lawyer is a visual person. And then when we sit down, I want to find out what the judge, what type of judge it is. He was an auditory judge. He didn't have to look. He just, listened and took notes. So, and my former lawyer decided to represent himself instead of taking a lawyer. So every time he got up, and started explaining something, looking at me because the judge wasn't looking, I was going like this all the time, And then it would stop him because, I mean, visual people need, their vision, before expressing it. So I was going like this to erase. So he really got perturbed about that. So he would complain. I put my hands down. Of course, my new lawyer sitting beside me was saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? Let me do it, And then I would do like this every time he spoke, then put my hands down and he would complain. The judge would raise his head, and say, what? He says, well, proceed, proceed. So eventually it took 3 days. Okay. It took 3 days. And oh yes, the other thing also very important. When I got up to testify, because he called me up to the witness stand, he says, "Do you remember that I showed you this paper?" So I was under oath, and I didn't say, "No, you didn't show it to me." I said, "You didn't explain it to me." Auditory, judge's auditory. So the judge understood, and of course he started badgering me. He says, "I did show you the paper." I said, "You never explained to me." And so the judge says, "Come on, like stop badgering, the witness." So 3 days later, I won the case. I mean, 3 days later, I didn't know, but a few days later, they said, not only did I win the case, but out of the $30,000, actually it was $20,000, $20,000. I got $17,000 back from that
Wow.
lawyer. And he lost his license for 1 year. He looked like a complete fool in court. So he lost his license for 1 year. Powerful stuff. Of course, he couldn't pay me, so the bar association paid the money, out of their funds, for this. So this was an instance that the NLP used where I actually saved money or made a little money, So that was interesting.
I'd say the training more than paid for itself 10 times over.
Oh yeah. And there was another instance also. I don't know if you saw that instance, is that when I was a manufacturer, before I became consultant, all this, we were doing soldiers' helmet for the US Army, and that was fabricated in Canada, actually. We were doing quite a lot, but eventually Vietnam War, got over, and I remember I was an inspector on the floor inspecting those helmets. So many years later, the US government says, "Can you do Kevlar?" And we said, "No, we don't know anything about Kevlar." So he says, "Well, we're going to replace all the helmets, and there's going to be hundred thousands of them. You want to do it?" So we found a company in Milan, Italy, that actually did those helmets. So we said, "We'd like to meet with you." They said, "Well, we're going to New York City. We'll go past, Montreal, and we'll visit with you." So I was on a business trip at the time, and they came over and they said, "Listen, if you want to know our technology, you've got to put $1 million on the table." Those were the days when the bank interest rates were at 18%, and we had lots of steel. So it was costing us a mint, and we were making about 3-4% profit on metal stampings, but they had lots of volume, but still. So we didn't have $1 million to put on the table. So we said, "Well, we'll forget about it." Weeks later, government calls us again, says, "Listen, do you want to do it or not?" I says, "Well, okay, let's see what we can do." So I go to Milan, met with the people, and I start using NLP again. What I did, when I sat down, I synchronized the body posture, with the president, even his breathing rate. And then at one point, I switched my position and the president followed, okay? So then I used an embedded command. I said, "I suppose, and when we sign the agreement, here's the embedded command, you will show us the technology." Just like that.
Yeah.
He gets up, goes to his briefcase, takes the video out, puts it in the video player, presses play. We get all the technology for free. And he said, "Listen, we trust you, and go and do your bid, and see what happens. And if you get it, okay, we'll sign the paperwork. If you don't get it, that's fine." We didn't get it. We found out after we did the bid, we didn't get it. So we saved 18% on $1 million. You can imagine trying to get $1 million back from an Italian company, months and months later, and paying 18% interest. So these are the big two examples, but there's so many, many little examples, in the coaching, when I intervene with people, either, and I did some, with weight loss also, with, starting a business, all kinds of other things, that people need to do. NLP, and especially I would say conversational hypnosis, is really good, and it's used in copywriting, conversational hypnosis used in copywriting, all that, to influence people. And the thing though, that people say, "Well, yeah, are you manipulating people?" I said, "Well, the manipulation and the influence are the same techniques. The only difference is that what's the outcome? Is the person getting something out of it, or are you just getting yourself everything and they're getting nothing? That's manipulation. Right. But influence is you're influencing, or you're changing their neural pathways so that they develop habits that become automatic on the positive side, on the proactive positive side." So that's essentially, what I've been doing.
I love it. And for people that are unfamiliar with NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, I would like to offer a very brief summary. NLP is responsible for how you interpret information. You can choose to delete the information that you receive, you can choose to distort the information you receive, or you can choose to generalize information that you receive. And understanding how the body interplays with this information and how you can discuss and model and mold your conversations, model and mold even how you hold your body, like you mentioned the breathing before in that other interaction, how you even match and mirror is another aspect of NLP. NLP has so many components, glorious components to it, that when you pair it with hypnosis, which that's a whole nother thing and a whole nother show,
Yeah.
it really offers so much for people. And the reason why I wanted to bring you on today, I could talk about this all day, but there's nothing like, and nothing for me more glorious than allowing people to see how NLP can be used to solve your problem. And how this
Hmm.
relates to eating and emotional eating and food addiction is, you have problems at work, you have problems with loved ones, you have problems with business deals and solutions that need to be crafted. And NLP helps facilitate that and make it so much easier and the path so much smoother, and everyone wins.
Yes, exactly. I totally agree with you. Totally agree with
Mhm.
you. The fact is that when you're actually using these techniques, at the beginning, of course, you have to think that what you're using eventually becomes like second nature. Like you adapt so rapidly to whatever situation it is, because you've got all those, those pathways and adaptation, all the rest of it. Not that will all. I mean, I've been working across Canada. I've worked, with French people, Portuguese, Italians, Germans, English, Chinese, Hong Kong, and Australians.
Mhm.
The thing is that all these patterns, all these generalization distortions and generalizations, or omissions, sorry, uh, all these things people are using all the time, and they don't know that they're doing it,
Right.
and they start to believe, I guess, what they think, as saying that, let's say, all men are all the same, as an example of generalization. All men are all the same. At one
Mhm.
time, there was a woman that said to me, "We know that all salesmen are all the same." I said, "How many salespeople do you know?" She said, "Well, I know at least 10." I said, "Well, in Montreal, there's at least 280,000 of them. Are you saying to me that they're all the same?" Well, maybe not. So
Mhm.
this is like not really contesting, but to give people, I guess, additional resources. And
Mhm.
instead of, setting their beliefs on something of a generalization, once you
Mhm.
start digging deep under underlying, levels, then you find
Mhm.
out that they just kept repeating this all over again. They might have heard it from somebody else, and they make it their own without really
Mhm.
knowing what the source of it is.
Yes.
So this,
Yes.
when you discover what the source is, be it, emotional, be it at work, relationships, whatever it is, once you start
Mhm.
really, and I use the pedal thing, you remove the pedals until you get to the bud. Okay,
Yes.
so when you remove the layers, then eventually you find out, oh, there's where it's coming from. And then people
Yes.
say, oh my God, and then realize, that it came from there. But you just
Mhm.
kept building around the stuff, over and over again all your
Mhm.
life until it
Mhm.
became like a statement of truth, which is not really.
Yes.
That's the
Yes.
fascinating thing about NLP and Ericksonian hypnosis, actually. It's
It is.
really fun. I mean, there's a lot of satisfaction out of seeing, epiphanies, people happening to people. You're
Mhm.
seeing the change in their faces, even, like all, like the concerns, even the furrows here, they sort of
Yes.
smooth out. And then you know that you've done the work because the body finally rejoices into what's happening.
And it
and
releases.
and probably the subconscious says it's about time.
The
Because
brain
people get
finally
dreams, they
says,
get the, yeah.
yeah, the brain finally just says, thank goodness.
Yeah, finally she or he got it.
Yeah. Now, here's what I love from your experience. NLP, there are many skills that people can pick up.
Mhm.
And I always say, go with the skill that you feel naturally drawn towards, because that's really where your gifting is. But sometimes when we learn certain skills, we learn these skills and they're only applicable to one tiny facet or a couple of parts of our lives. What I am so on fire about, and what gives me chills about NLP and hypnosis and EFT tapping, is you have used this internationally. This
Yes.
translates well
Mhm.
worldwide.
Yes. Actually, yes, it does. Yeah. There's different little things like when you talk about the nonverbal aspect, synchronization, all that. We know that different cultures, like as an example, maybe in England, if you're meeting with someone, you might be farther apart, than if you're an American or a Canadian, where you're very close. And if you're Italian, of course, you're going to be very close. And if you're, from Arab descent, whatever, you're really bit closer, that you can actually smell the person's breath. So there are certain cultural things that you have to be aware of. Generally, the NLP techniques about, creating trust and rapport by the nonverbal, and which is actually the posture, the head tilt and all the rest of it. And also, the other part, which is auditory, the speed that you speak, the timbre, the tone, the volume, the sequence, whatever. And also, the kinesthetic part, how comfortable do you feel? So there is some adaptation to different cultures. However, the basics of NLP, as far as the techniques are concerned, are universal, because I've worked also, in indigenous communities up north, north of Ontario, which takes about 5 hours to get there.
Okay.
And it's a different culture, but I've noticed that you can adapt a lot of the NLP to whatever culture there is. You just have to be aware of, the way that people act, and then you just, synchronize to it. It's that simple, really.
And that's what I like. You mentioned it's so simple. Sometimes I feel that we deselect ourselves from certain vats of knowledge and pursuing certain bits of knowledge because we don't think that won't work for me.
Yeah.
But it will work for anyone, no matter what your age is. I often lament over the fact that, my goodness, imagine if I had come across this knowledge and had been well schooled and tooled in this in high school, for example. Can you imagine how this would have changed? I don't know about you, but I can say for me, how this would have changed my interaction. Even when I have let's take, for example, even the class bully, for example. Prior to NLP, I would have internalized that there was something wrong with me. Even interactions with loved ones, well-meaning loved ones, will say that there's something wrong with me. Now I see there's nothing wrong with me in that case. I may have other things going on, but there's nothing wrong with me in that case. They're looking at it through their lens and perception.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they're ascribing and saying that you're not able to achieve certain things. For those of you that have certain career aspirations and you have well-intentioned loved ones saying from career, wait, whatever, that it's not possible. I believe the expression is that there's not a lack of resources. It's just unresourceful states.
Exactly.
Essentially.
Yeah. Exactly.
But imagine working with that knowledge when you're in high school and working outwards from that.
I had one opportunity at one point to give a class on NLP to a class that was ahead of the other students, And of course, when I started, I only had something like 40 minutes, imagine. So I went to that school, it was in Montreal, and I started, teaching them, the NLP stuff, and they were looking, what? And I said, you're at an age that you should go further and study that, because, we're talking about people that are about, at that time, there was something like 16, 17 years old, okay, about something like that in the class. So they looked at me like really buggy-eyed, and I said, well, you remember, you're like, don't trust me. Don't believe anything I tell you until you try it for yourself.
Yeah.
And then find out. But it's the same thing with negotiation, or if negotiation techniques were given earlier, and I've used a lot of NLP in negotiation also, all the time, I should say. So if they learned about that, besides also how to do a plan of action and using the SMART acronym thing.
Yes.
That NLP and negotiation would be the three things that should be taught in school at a young age, because they can absorb it, and eventually it's going to change their lifestyle, right from the go. And it's going to help them also, and how to learn also, because I had the chance to go to nun school when I was very young, okay, and I'm an auditory, all right, so the nuns, kept, repeating the letters and repeating, and repeating. That was great for me. And of course, they had all the letters on the boards. I could also see it. And the thing is that if people know that if they really want to learn something, they can see it, they can hear it, and they can try it out, that's perfect. In fact, I did use this technique one time. I wanted to buy a new car, but I didn't have the money for it. So what did I do? I went to see it, I went to smell it, I went to touch it, I went to try it. And that came into my body, and 8 months later, I had the money to buy it. Now, there's no magic into it. It's just that I gave my body permission to use all my senses so that if the body wanted to get that car and the mind wanted to get that car, they had all the resources necessary to make that decision.
Mm.
And usually when I give courses or do the coaching, if I don't know what the person is, visual oriented, which means that they make mental images before they actually, they decide something or talk about something, or auditory, they need to talk to themselves, to review it, or they need to touch it, smell it, taste it, and do it. Then I will say, well, you will, like one time I saw an ad for a razor. They say you will see, you will hear, and you will feel the difference. So they were really reaching everybody. Visual people, auditory people, kinesthetic people. So when I do when I do courses, with lots of people, I will use words that will go get all these people so that I can understand them better, and at the same time I can be better understood. And that's pretty well the concept in NLP, to be better understood and to understand others better. Yeah.
Yes. Here's a question for you. Now, here's what my opinion is for people that are interested in pursuing NLP and studying more thoroughly. I was surprised to find out there were so many books on it. I was flabbergasted, really. But here's my opinion on that. You can read it in a book, just like you started off reading in a book. But I found, for me, and I think everyone's different, to really get it, to really graft it and integrate it effectively in your life, you need someone to walk and train and guide you through it.
Yeah, I think we've all done it. Like I've taken more courses on it. I've read pretty well all the books, with Erickson and all the books that came out, from the frogs thing. I can't remember the title exactly, but it's right in front of me, my bookshelf at the back there. And book reading is okay. I mean, it gives you the basic stuff, but it's only after you see somebody else doing it in front of you or doing it with you that you can really absorb it in a different way. Now, some people are, are self-taught, and they can actually, practice it. But of course, it can take a bit longer because they might commit all kinds of errors. So at the beginning, if they see that, well, this doesn't work, I tried it, doesn't work, okay? Well, the reason why it doesn't work is that maybe they didn't see somebody doing it properly first, and then started practicing with friends and families, and then eventually testing little bits. Like as an example, when I give courses on negotiation, there's a lot of NLP stuff in it. And I said, this is how to create trust and rapport with somebody. As soon as you, get in contact with them, take a look at the movement of the eyes, to see how they process the information. And then do they speak fast or they speak slower, and then what type of timbre or tone of voice do they have and all this, and then synchronize non-verbally with them. So there's a lot of stuff there. So the first week, what you're going to do is that as soon as you get in contact with someone, just simply, as you said, sit down, or if you're standing up, just synchronize with them and then forget about it. Okay. Second week, do the same thing. Okay. Synchronize with them at the beginning, forget about it. Then during the conversation, notice if they're synchronized with you or not. I mean, non-verbally. If they're not, then synchronize with them and then forget about it. Once you've done that quite a few weeks and it becomes natural for you to do it and you're thinking about doing it, because sometimes people forget to do it. So as you're thinking and remembering to do it, then after you can do what I do. And what I do usually, and I've done it quite a few times, is that as soon as I get in contact with somebody that I need to really, influence in, a buying decision for a course or coaching, whatever, then I will, within the first 2 minutes with the small talk and everything else, I will start to decipher, what type of person it is. And of course, as I'm sitting down, I'm going to synchronize with them, totally. Then after 2 minutes, and this is where a lot of people make a mistake, is that after 2 minutes, when you switch, let's say you're synchronize your head this way, and then you want to desynchronize to see if they're going to follow you, make sure that when you're doing that, you're the one who is speaking. And that's one common error that people do, because if you do it while they're speaking and you do this, it means you're not in agreement with them and they will feel it without knowing why. So that's one obstacle, okay? So you want to make sure that when you do switch to see if they're going to follow you, make sure that you're the one who's speaking before you actually do that. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
A genius negotiation tip. And this is your area of specialty, negotiations.
For the past year and a half, there's been a demand for it. I don't know why, because I've done, coaching courses, I've done leadership, supervision, time management. I've done it all. I've been at it for about 30 years,
Mhm.
and I've done it all. But
Mhm.
lately, it seems that, I'm getting a lot of people, especially the construction industry, for some reason,
Oh,
lots of people are saying, well, and so the latest course I've been giving for about a year and a half, and especially during COVID, has been
oh,
negotiation and influence
mhm.
techniques using NLP and Ericksonian hypnosis, which gives me satisfaction.
Question for you.
Yes.
Do you feel, and from your past experience, that these still translate well and as effectively and as powerfully via Zoom?
It's a bit more difficult, okay?
Mhm.
Because I mean, you can, as you look at people, and it depends how many people you have in front of you in the mosaic, okay?
Mhm.
But sometimes, when they come and they're highlighted, I would ask them a question. I would look at the position of the eyes when they answer it. So that's one way I can do it. As far as the nonverbal synchronization, it's more difficult because you only see the head, and it's difficult to do it and to make it, really meaningful. So
Mhm.
I'm going to rely more on the movement of the eyes and the type of words that they use, the type of questions they ask me, and if there's any generalizations, omissions, or distortions. That's the way I'm going to do it. But of course, the whole nonverbal aspect, which represents roughly 55% of your credibility, you don't really have it. So what happens is on the phone, when you don't have the nonverbal, the
Mhm.
paraverbal, which is the tone of voice, volume, and everything else, represents 85% of your credibility and 50%, 15% of what you say, right? So it's
Mhm.
important on the phone or even on the Zoom to the tone of voice, and then using the visual, auditory, kinesthetic words because you don't know who everybody
Mhm.
is really unless you
Mhm.
speak to them directly. So it is more difficult with Zoom, I must admit. Yes, but it's
Okay.
not impossible.
Yeah, not impossible. I would definitely agree with you there. I found for me, when I'm meeting with clients, what helps me, and this is a great tip for anyone that's trying to find a way to integrate aspects of NLP in their negotiations and their client meetings. What I found to be very effective is looking at that tone of voice, the eye expressions, for example,
Mm,
and really just focusing completely on what the person is saying and the content of what they're saying. See if there are any meta model
yeah,
metaphors that are being offered up, for example.
yeah,
So I find, for me, I found that to be very effective in regards to really getting in sync with and troubleshooting so much faster as opposed to doing no techniques in any shape, form,
yeah,
or fashion, and building that
yeah.
rapport, which is so important in all parts of our lives.
Yeah, exactly. Because rapport, I mean, once you've established, trust and rapport, the rest of it will flow. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people, don't take the time to create this trust and rapport. They'll go right into it, and start, really trying to dig up stuff. But people might not share as much until they can actually trust. I mean, there's the KLT approach, know, you know, like and then trust. So the KLT also works, when you're doing interventions with people, either in a Zoom, one-to-one coaching, group coaching, or a course, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, so but the first thing, empathy. Okay, really being empathetic. I mean, I call it even strategy. It's like empathetic strategy. You definitely have to create this empathy with people, and that they feel it, they see it, and they hear it, really. And in
Mhm.
this way, the rest of it will be easier. But if you
Mhm.
don't go through that, it's going to take more time and it's going to be harder to be able to develop that trust and rapport. So
And
that's
then
the
no one
number
wins.
one.
And
Yeah,
no one wins when we're out of rapport and out of sync. No one wins.
this is it.
I I love, completely love how you have integrated NLP and so many aspects. Because NLP is not really it's not something that you just have a recipe and a checklist to go through. Some
Yeah,
parts you'll use, some parts you won't use, but just
yeah.
having that knowledge and
Mm.
integrating it, how you integrate it, you are a shining example of the vast potential of NLP realized.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, you talk about meta model, to really clarify what people are saying. There's also the meta programs. Is it a person that is more concentrated on getting away from something or going towards something? That's one of the meta programs, and that's
Yeah.
another thing that I also find out. Even if it's a coaching, a personal, life coaching or whatever, I want to find out right at the beginning, after establishing trust and rapport and all the rest of it, to find out if the person is actually a person who wants to get away from something, from the problems, or
Yes.
somebody who actually wants to go to the solution. And that will determine the process.
If you had 3 tips for someone that's negotiating
Mhm.
and they haven't dived into NLP yet, what would be the top 3 recommendations that you would advise someone to take or implement and use from NLP that could possibly help them during that negotiation?
Well, one thing that most people that I teach negotiation, is preparation.
Mm.
Finding out who you're going to negotiate with, who's going to be there, what type of their roles and everything else like this. And if you can actually go to LinkedIn as an example, or even their Facebook or even a Twitter account, and you take a look at what type of language that they're using, what they look like, and if they did any posting or anything like that, just read the words and see to a certain extent what type of, is it more visual, auditory, and aesthetic. Part of the preparation would be that. That's what I do actually when I go negotiate with someone. And sometimes even if I go to give coaching or courses and I get the list of the participants, I will go to LinkedIn, I will go to Facebook, and I will go to Twitter and just, get to know them a little bit. Part of the preparation is going to be that. The other, of course, is going to find out, okay, what type of strategies and tactics am I going to use, on this negotiation? And I'm also going to set up exactly what are the things that I really want. And once I've established that, I'm going to determine, what my plan B is going to be in case it doesn't work. That's another thing that people don't do. They don't have a very strong plan B, which we call in terms BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. So a plan B is that if it doesn't work with you, then I have a plan B, and that's going to show in my nonverbal language. Because if I'm very strong in saying, well, if we can't get a deal, then I've got an alternative, which is my plan B, my B plan, okay? So that would be in the preparation. The other thing that you should learn is as soon as you get in contact with somebody, since you want to develop this trust and rapport, you should know how to synchronize nonverbally, paraverbally, the voice, and also, the words, so that you can establish trust and rapport rapidly. I've had people at one point when I used to give courses outside, like in the United States, I would go for a beer at the bar, and then somebody would come right beside me and say, hi, how are you? What do you do? And all this. And within about 10 minutes, they would give me their life story to realize after 15, 20 minutes is, why am I telling you this? I don't even know you. And at one point, I said, I must have that kind of face, to have people, but that's the whole trust thing, okay? The other thing that they should know in negotiation is how to reframe objections, not answer objections, but reframe them. Most of the times, people, the mistake they're going to make when they go into negotiation is going to start talking about price right away. Don't talk about price, because price puts people into positions. And when you're in a position, you won't move from the position. So if people come into negotiation and says, well, what's your price? Well, before we talk about price, let's see, what other things are important to you. What is important to you beside price in this negotiation? Delivery, guarantees, whatever, So you sort of detract from talking about price to going to something else so that you can create value before you claim that value. So I don't know if I had 3 tips in there, but those are the main tips I would say. Okay. Yeah. So if somebody, let's say, like, you're too expensive as an example, okay, you're too expensive. Okay. I wouldn't say, no, I'm not too expensive. I've been working this, I've got this degree, you don't go that way, because then they're going to resist. And there is a trigger that when people get objected to, they get defensive. Okay. So the thing you would do is say something, I see what you mean. If they're visual, I get you if they're kinesthetic, and I hear you if they're auditory. Okay. So there's no resistance because I see what you mean. Okay. So then I say, besides the price, what else would permit us to go ahead? Go ahead is an embedded command, to go ahead with this. Okay. What else would permit us to go ahead with this embedded command? And then they say, well, let's talk about the deliveries and this. Okay, so what kind of delivery would you have? So part of the reframing of the objection, then I would say, so in other words, you want to make sure that you're getting a very good deal. Is that right? Of course, they can't say no. Okay, they can't say no to that. And then I will ask the question, when you say that I'm too expensive, what do you mean by that? So this comes later. Instead of creating resistance at the beginning, I don't resist at all. I simply say, besides that, what else is there? So you want to make sure you get a good deal, right? You want to make sure you get a good delivery. You want to make sure that you get good guarantee. And they all say yes to that. So you're creating a yes set at the same time. So then eventually I do have to have this question. When you say I'm too expensive, what do you really mean by that? And then I'll listen. But because I did not offer any resistance before, and I had them say that what they wanted instead of what they did not want, then of course it's easier to negotiate after that. So I would say those are the main things really that need to be done to negotiate and get a deal that will be mutual benefit. Now, in negotiation, you could have a win-win, or you could have a win-win, or a win-win this way, rather than a win-lose, okay? So it doesn't mean that it has to be equal win-win. It just means that I got what I wanted out of the negotiation, and you got what you wanted out of it. We might have won everything, but at least we got a working model of a good negotiation. So that's what I would propose to do. But do get into NLP, if you want to be better negotiator, do get in NLP. And I'm still surprised these years that most people don't know about this. And it's been around since early 70s, actually.
I agree.
And maybe once in a while, I'll hit somebody who knows about it, but they don't know as much. So I have fun with that too, so that's quite interesting.
You've just given for people, we all negotiate in our lives.
All the time.
All the time. It
doesn't even when you're doing therapy, you're negotiating.
Yes. And I can only imagine the amount of stress that people experience. And once again, bringing it back to the whole food addiction, emotional eating, that stress triggers a binge and overeating episode. So this is one of the reasons why I really wanted those great tips to share with people, because you can apply this anywhere. So I could talk to you all day. You know this.
It's a good
Where can people find you?
Well, the easiest one, and to remember is Coach on Demand at videotron.ca, or my phone number 450-672-3488. Those are the best ways. I'm on LinkedIn also, and right now I'm doing a promotion, for persuasive negotiation. So you can reach me there also. You can send me a message. You can send me a messenger message through Facebook if you want to. I'm actually easily reachable, and I do answer real quickly. Like it doesn't take days, like I'll answer almost within the hour. If I'm not doing something, like training or coaching, I'll answer right away, actually. So I'm easy. I don't have a website, as I told you earlier. I don't need one right now. I've got plenty of clients, to do it. So I didn't find the need for it right now. I might open a blog at one point, but so far so good. Those Coach on Demand, at videotron.ca, or my phone number 450-672-3488, sorry, is going to reach me. That's the best way to do it.
Okay. Well, everyone, you heard it here first. If you've ever had any questions or wondered how NLP can assist you, and you put it in a little box, for example, that it can only work in one way, we have just served to you and demonstrated to you the many ways that you can use NLP in business, in relationships, even negotiations. And can you imagine how your life would change having these tools at your disposal? Can you see how life would be different? What would actually happen for the goals you have in your life? So everyone, thank you so much for being here with us. Please make sure to share this episode with anyone, everyone, really. I can't see anyone that wouldn't benefit from this.
You're going to become a better person.
Yes, you're going to become a better person. Your stress levels will reduce. You'll achieve your goals, and you'll shorten the distance between where you are and your personal best and where you want to be.
That's a guarantee.
Yes. So for episodes of the Dr. Grant Show, both past and present and future, you can find us on edibleaddiction.com. My name is Dr. Kirsten Grant. I am your show host. Thank you for watching, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you.